They say you can't miss what you never had, but what if everything you swore you didn't want shows up at your door with tired eyes and a child who calls her mama? I thought I was content with my life. I was wrong. Why does a man with everything choose to come home to no one? That question followed me like a shadow, sometimes whispered at hospital fundraisers, sometimes boldly asked by my mother's friends with hopeful daughters. I was 34, a successful surgeon with a prestigious job, a sleek house in the suburbs, and a car that hummed like confidence itself. And yet, I came home to silence. It wasn't that I couldn't find someone. It was that I never wanted to, not really. Not until I met her. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. It was an early spring afternoon, and I had just finished a 12-hour shift filled with back-to-back surgeries. Bone-deep tired, I pulled into the parking lot of the neighborhood supermarket, craving nothing but a frozen pizza and sleep. That's when I saw them. A young woman and a boy, maybe 5 or 6, standing outside the store in the chill. She wasn't asking for help, but her eyes said everything. The boy clutched a stuffed bear, his lips blue with cold. Her hands trembled as she tucked a too-thin sweater tighter around him. No sign, no begging. Just stillness. And shame. I don't know what made me speak. Maybe the way her chin tilted up when she caught me staring, defiant, proud. Maybe the ghost of something familiar in her face. "You two all right?" I asked, keeping my voice gentle. She hesitated. "We're fine. Just waiting for someone." But I could see the lie hanging in the space between us like mist. "I'm heading out. If you need to warm up, even for a bit, I live 5 minutes from here." I gestured toward my car. "I'm not asking questions. Just offering heat and food." Silence stretched between us, then the boy shivered violently. She finally nodded. They didn't talk much in the car. The boy stared out the window, eyes wide with exhaustion. The woman, she told me her name was Emily, kept glancing at him like she was counting his breaths. I brought them inside, offered the kid a grilled cheese, and showed her the spare room. It had been gathering dust for years. "I can't pay," she said, not meeting my gaze. "I don't need rent," I replied. "But I do need help around the house. Cleaning, laundry, a bit of cooking maybe. You up for that?" She looked at me like I'd offered her a second chance at life. Yes. That's how it started. Emily moved in with her son, Lucas. She was efficient, quiet, and kept to herself. I learned quickly that asking about her past was unwelcome. Walls would go up so fast you'd think she was a soldier in a war. But I also learned she was kind. Lucas adored her. She made the house warm again. There was always soup on the stove. The laundry was always folded. On nights when I worked late, I'd return to a small light left on in the hallway and something homemade wrapped in foil on the counter. We settled into a rhythm. And somehow, in all that quiet domesticity, I realized my house didn't feel empty anymore. Still, I told myself this was temporary. A kind act. A coincidence. Until one evening changed everything. If you've ever lied to save face, you know how easily one small, dumb decision can spin into something enormous. Mine started with an invitation in the mail and ended with Emily walking into a ballroom that made my heart forget how to beat. It began with a letter, an invitation to my med school reunion. 10 years since graduation. Everyone was bringing spouses and partners. Family-style banquet, the invitation said. Cocktail attire. Bring your +1. And that's when I froze. Not because I was afraid of being alone. I'd made peace with that a long time ago. But because I knew what the room would be like, old classmates with their arms around beautiful wives, surgeons-turned-dads showing off photos of their kids, whispered judgments behind champagne glasses. For once, I didn't want to be the one eating chicken marsala alone at the corner table. So I asked Emily. I swear, I rehearsed the ask like I was proposing marriage. She was folding towels when I walked in. I have this event, I began. It's just a reunion. Med school. Everyone's bringing someone. She didn't look up. Sounds fancy. Yeah. I was wondering if you'd go with me. Just pretend to be, you know, my wife. Just for the night. Her hands paused mid-fold. The silence that followed was dense and sharp. Finally, you want me to pretend to be your wife? Just for a night, I added quickly. No strings. No pressure. You'd be helping me out. She studied me for a moment that felt like an eternity. You sure about that? I trust you. That was the first time I realized I actually meant it. We went shopping the next day. She needed a dress. I offered to cover it, and she refused, then reluctantly agreed on a modest budget. When she stepped out of the fitting room in a navy gown that hugged her waist and softened her eyes, I nearly forgot how to speak. Too much? She asked. Too perfect, I replied. Lucas stayed with my neighbor that night. We drove to the event in my car, the silence between us thick but not awkward. Just buzzing. At the reunion, people stared. Whispers followed us through the ballroom. Emily smiled politely, standing close, her hand resting lightly on my arm. To everyone else, we were the perfect couple. A man with a beautiful, elegant wife. Someone finally settled. I saw my old classmates' surprise. Envy, even. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the outsider. She charmed them all, asked about their kids, laughed at their stories, nodded knowingly when someone brought up residency trauma. No one questioned her. She belonged. And for a moment, so did I. But the fantasy shattered later that night, unexpectedly, painfully. We were walking to the car when Emily stopped dead in her tracks. We were passing an old photo display, med school memories. Group pictures, awards, in memoriam plaques. That's when she saw it. A photo of a young woman. Smiling, bright eyes, soft curls. Emily reached out, fingers brushing the frame like she was touching a ghost. That's my sister, she said softly. Her name was Rachel. Her voice cracked. She died 6 years ago. During childbirth. She didn't look at me when she added, Lucas is her son. I hadn't heard Rachel's name in over 6 years. But the moment Emily said it, the memory came flooding back with a force that knocked the air out of my lungs. Rachel. A summer night. A campfire by the lake. Laughter echoing over the water. I'd gone to that fishing cabin with a few friends after residency, our version of decompression. She was there with her cousin. One night, she couldn't sleep, and neither could I. We ended up sitting on the dock until the sky turned purple with morning. She kissed me first. It was soft. Hesitant. Like she wasn't sure if she should. We never exchanged last names. No numbers. No promises. Just a perfect night sealed in memory like a pressed flower. And now Emily, her sister, was standing beside me, her eyes glossy, her voice barely above a whisper. She died giving birth. It was a mess. There was no father listed on the birth certificate. Just me. I took Lucas. I raised him. I tried to speak. To ask the one question burning through my ribs, what year? What month? But she beat me to it. That picture, she said, her voice raw, it's from your med school. She told me about one night, with a doctor. Our eyes met. The truth hung there, trembling. I didn't need a DNA test to know what my gut was already screaming. Lucas might be my son. I didn't sleep that night. I paced the hallway while Emily curled into herself on the living room couch. I didn't press her for more. I didn't know how to, not without breaking something delicate and sacred. But the weight of it grew with every breath. Lucas. My son. The thought was both electrifying and terrifying. Could I have really missed 6 years of his life? Was he already calling someone else Dad? Would Emily hate me for the truth? I wanted to tell her. I needed to. But I also didn't want to shatter the fragile peace we'd built. She'd trusted me with her story. I owed her mine. The next morning, over black coffee and silence, I finally said it. I knew Rachel. Emily didn't blink. I met her once. A fishing cabin. Years ago. We didn't exchange names. I didn't even know. She looked at me. And for the first time since she moved in, I saw fear on her face. Not of me. But of what the truth could mean. You think Lucas is yours, she said, flatly. I don't know, I admitted. But, it lines up. She stood up, holding her coffee like a shield. Don't do this if you're going to vanish. Don't step in and out of his life. He's already lost one mother. My heart twisted. I'm not going anywhere. Later that week, I offered to pay for a DNA test. Emily was hesitant, torn between curiosity and dread. But eventually, she agreed. While we waited for the results, life in the house shifted. Emily grew quiet again. Lucas sensed it. He followed me around more, asking questions, showing me his drawings. He even asked me to come to his school play. I went. He waved at me from the stage like I was someone important. Like I was someone he trusted. I didn't know what the test would say. But my heart already had its answer. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. Just a thin sheet of paper tucked inside, holding the weight of the world. Emily was the one who opened it. She didn't speak. Just read, slowly, lips moving silently. Then she looked up. And I knew. It's positive, she said, her voice calm but trembling. Lucas is yours. I didn't move at first. I couldn't. My body went still the way it sometimes does in the OR, when the stakes are impossibly high and one wrong cut could change everything. But this wasn't the OR. This was real life. My son. Lucas. A name I hadn't chosen, a childhood I hadn't witnessed, a bond that had formed without me, and yet, I felt something in my chest start to bloom. Pride. Terror. Love. Emily sat on the edge of the couch, her shoulders pulled tight. I didn't know, she said quickly. I swear. I only found out when I saw the photo. And I didn't tell you earlier because I didn't think it mattered. It matters, I said softly. But not the way you think. She looked at me, and for the first time since that cold night outside the supermarket, I saw the real her, exhausted, scared, raw. I've been doing this alone for so long, she whispered. Fighting for his healthcare, managing his asthma, working jobs that don't ask too many questions. And now you come in, this doctor, this man with a house and a career and, what, now you get to be the hero. There was no venom in her voice. Just pain. I don't want to take anything from you, I said. I just want to be there. I want to do right by him. Even if I leave. I paused. You're planning to? She looked away. I've lived my life with one foot out the door. It's how I survive. It hit me then, this wasn't about me. It was about the fear that came with hope. The fear that staying meant risking more heartbreak. You don't have to run, I said. Not from me. Not from this. She didn't answer. But her eyes filled, and that was enough. Over the next few weeks, I started showing up in Lucas's life, not as a replacement, not as a rescuer, but as someone steady. I took him to the clinic for a specialist checkup. Paid for his treatments. Got him new inhalers, better ones. We went to the park. I helped him build a Lego tower so tall he declared it indestructible. He called me Dr. Ben at first. Then just Ben. One night, when Emily was putting him to bed, I heard him ask, "Is Dr. Ben my dad?" Emily hesitated, then said, "Yes. He is." There was no fanfare. No dramatic reaction. Just a quiet, cool, before he turned over and went to sleep. I stood outside the door, blinking hard. Cool. Emily and I weren't a couple. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But something unspoken was shifting between us, soft glances in the kitchen, conversations that lasted just a little longer, laughter that came easier. She still kept her guard up. But every time I made Lucas laugh, or stayed late to help with dinner, or listened to her without trying to fix things, her armor cracked. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it felt like the beginning of something. Something real. The moment I realized I was in love with Emily wasn't cinematic. No music swelled. No lightning cracked across the sky. It was quiet. Lucas had spilled orange juice all over his drawing, and she rushed over to help, crouched beside him, gently patting the paper while whispering, "It's okay, baby. We can fix it." I watched her laugh as Lucas smeared a new sun across the page. Her hair was messy, her sleeves rolled up, and for one fragile second, I saw not the woman who came from tragedy, but the woman who held this family together with nothing but her bare hands and relentless love. And I knew. I was in love with her. It scared the hell out of me. I didn't know how to tell her. Every time I tried, I saw the hesitation in her eyes, the flinch whenever we got too close. She wasn't ready. Maybe she never would be. But my friends noticed. "You look different," one said after work drinks. "Less detached." Another teased, "So when's the wedding?" I laughed them off, but something was shifting. Lucas had started calling me Dad once, by accident. He immediately corrected himself, but I told him he didn't have to. His face lit up. That moment stayed with me for days. Still, Emily remained careful. She hadn't shared her feelings, hadn't crossed the line we both felt humming under the surface. Until one Friday night. I came home late from surgery. Lucas was already asleep. Emily was sitting on the couch in one of my old sweatshirts, flipping through a book she clearly wasn't reading. "You look exhausted," she said as I dropped onto the cushion beside her. "Long day." Kid swallowed a bottle cap. "Took hours." She smiled. "Sounds glamorous." I looked at her, really looked. "Emily, I've wanted to say something." She froze. Don't what? Don't ruin this." "I'm not trying to ruin anything." "You're trying to make it more," she whispered, suddenly on the edge of tears. "And I don't know if I can do more." Her voice cracked, and she shook her head. "I don't trust what I feel. Not yet. Not after everything." "I'm not asking you to fall in love with me," I said gently. "I just want you to know I already have." She stared at me, eyes wide. "Why?" "Because you stayed. Because you fought. Because you love that boy like he's the sun. And because you made my house feel like a home." She didn't speak. Just reached over and took my hand. That was enough. The next week, I took Lucas to the park. When he fell and scraped his knee, he cried for me. Not Emily. Me. That night, I kissed his forehead goodnight. "Love you, Dad," he whispered sleepily. My heart nearly gave out. When I came back downstairs, Emily was watching from the hallway. "I heard that," she said, voice soft. "I know," I replied. She walked toward me slowly, then pressed her lips to mine, light, warm, and trembling. "I'm scared," she admitted against my mouth. So am I whispered. Let's be scared together. Emily didn't say yes. She didn't say no either. Instead, she started letting me in. Small things at first, making 2 cups of coffee instead of 1, asking me what I wanted for dinner, handing me the grocery list without a second thought. These were gestures that might seem ordinary to anyone else, but to me, they felt monumental. The walls she had built weren't crashing down, but they were slowly, tenderly, being dismantled brick by brick. And I knew better than to rush it. Lucas was thriving. He laughed more, played harder, and his teachers said he was participating in class like never before. I helped him with his homework in the evenings, watched cartoons I didn't understand, and tucked him in most nights. Emily watched us from the doorway sometimes, arms crossed and eyes glassy. One evening, after Lucas fell asleep with his head on my chest during a movie, she sat beside me and whispered, "I never thought he'd have this." "You mean me?" I asked, brushing his hair back. "No," she smiled. "A dad. A home. Safety." I didn't say anything. I just held her gaze and gave her the answer without words, "I'm not going anywhere." Things weren't perfect. We had our awkward moments, like when Lucas asked if he had to call me Dad forever, or when Emily would get distant without warning. But they always passed. We had dinner with some of my friends, just a casual get-together at my place. Emily was nervous, but she held her own. My friends adored her. They pulled me aside afterward. "She's the one," they said. I already knew. Then came the day I decided to tell my parents. They lived a few hours away, the kind of people who thought appearances were everything and surprises meant bad news. I hadn't told them about Emily. Or Lucas. Or the fact that I had a son. I sat down with Emily at the kitchen table. "I want you to meet my parents," I said. She went still. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. I'm not what they'll expect." "They don't need to expect anything," I said. "They need to meet the people who matter." A week later, we drove out there, me, Emily, and Lucas, all dressed neatly but not stiff. I was more nervous than I'd ever been in my life. My mom opened the door. Her eyes swept over Emily, then landed on Lucas. "This is Emily," I said. "And this is Lucas, my son." A long pause. Then, quietly, "He has your eyes." That was all it took. Dinner was simple. Tense at first. But Emily charmed them the same way she did at the reunion. Lucas won them over with his knock-knock jokes and a gap-toothed smile. By the end of the night, my mother was asking if he liked chocolate chip cookies and my father was showing him how to fold paper airplanes. It wasn't just acceptance, it was belonging. When we drove home that night, Emily reached over and laced her fingers through mine. "You know what this feels like?" she asked. "What?" "A beginning." The first time I brought Emily flowers, she panicked. Not dramatically, no tears or shouting. Just this quiet freeze, like someone had set off an emotional landmine. Her fingers hovered over the bouquet like they were made of glass. "They're just flowers," I said softly, unsure if I'd done something wrong. "I know," she whispered. "But the last time someone gave me flowers, it was an apology." "For what?" "For walking out 2 days later." The silence between us filled with the ghost of someone who had let her down. And I realized that love, for her, didn't just come with hope, it came with flashbacks. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, not for the first time. She looked at me like she wanted to believe me. We'd started living like a family. Emily and Lucas were still technically my tenants, but the lines had blurred. She cooked dinner. I fixed the leaky faucet. Lucas left his shoes by the front door next to mine. It wasn't official, but it was real. One evening, Lucas came home with a drawing from school. 3 stick figures holding hands. "That's me," he pointed proudly. "That's you. And that's Mom." He paused, then added, "And the baby." Emily's head whipped around. "What baby?" He shrugged. "I just thought maybe someday." Emily's eyes widened, then she laughed, covering her mouth with her hand. That night, we sat on the couch, the soft hum of the dishwasher in the background. "What if I wanted that?" I asked her. "A dishwasher?" "No. A baby. With you." She didn't answer right away. Just leaned into my shoulder and said, "I think I'd want that too. Someday." A few weeks later, Emily stood in the bathroom staring at a test with 2 faint pink lines. Her hands shook. She hadn't told me yet. She didn't know how. But she didn't feel afraid. Not like before. Because this time, she knew she wouldn't be doing it alone. The next morning, she woke me up with the most serious expression I'd ever seen on her face. No makeup. Still in my t-shirt. "I'm pregnant," she said. I blinked. Sat up. "You're sure?" She nodded. I stared at her, then smiled, slow, wide, and full of something I didn't even have words for yet. She braced herself. And then I stood up, wrapped my arms around her, and whispered, "We're having a baby." Her breath hitched. "You're not scared?" Terrified, I laughed. But in the best way. That night, Lucas fell asleep early. Emily and I lay in bed, our hands on her stomach, even though it was still too early to feel anything. "Girl or boy?" she asked. "Girl," I said. "I don't know why. I just feel it." She smiled. "She's going to be fierce. She'll have you as her mom. She'll have you as her dad." We were both quiet after that, overcome by the strange, powerful joy of a future being built right under our feet. A family. A real one. It's funny how the biggest moments sneak up on you. We were eating pancakes on a lazy Sunday morning. Lucas was coloring at the table, humming to himself, syrup on his cheeks. Emily was still wearing one of my old flannels, her hair tied up in a way that made my chest ache with how much I loved her. And I realized, I didn't want to wait anymore. No grand plan. No expensive dinner or fireworks. Just us. The life we'd built. The quiet joy of a kitchen filled with the smell of cinnamon and the sound of family. I stood up, walked to the drawer, pulled out the ring I'd bought a week ago but hadn't dared to use. "Emily," I said, turning toward her. She looked up mid-bite. "What?" And I dropped to one knee. Her fork clattered against the plate. Lucas gasped. "Are you serious?" she asked, breathless. "As a heart attack," I said. "I don't want to keep pretending this isn't everything I've ever wanted. You. Lucas. Our baby. This life. I want to make it official. I want to be yours, in every way." Emily's eyes filled. "Ben. Marry me." She didn't speak. Just covered her mouth with one hand and nodded. Then, "Yes. Yes, yes, of course I will." Lucas clapped, shouting, "Does this mean I get to be the ring bearer?" We laughed so hard we couldn't breathe. The pancakes went cold. The ring slid onto her finger like it had always belonged there. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't staged. It was perfect. The wedding planning was simple. Emily didn't want a big ceremony, and neither did I. Just close friends, my parents, a few of Emily's former co-workers, and one hyper-excited 6-year-old who took his job as best man ring bearer flower boy very seriously. She wore a soft ivory dress. I wore a gray suit. We exchanged vows under the oak tree in our backyard, surrounded by string lights and the people who'd watched us become something more than survival stories. When we kissed, Lucas yelled, "Ew." then promptly hugged us both. It was the happiest day of my life. Until the next one. 3 months later, Emily stood in the nursery, her hand on her belly. "It's a girl," the doctor had said. We hadn't picked a name yet. We were still arguing between Grace, Ellie, and Charlotte. But none of that mattered. Because in that moment, with sunlight pouring in through the window and Emily's fingers resting gently on her growing stomach, I realized something. I hadn't just found a family. I had built one. And they had saved me just as much as I had saved them. It was Emily's idea, Rachel, for the sister she lost, and Grace, for the second chance life had given all of us. The first time I said it out loud, it caught in my throat. I hadn't realized how much her sister had lived inside our story, inside Lucas, inside Emily. Saying her name felt like a tribute. Like closure. Like healing. Lucas was over the moon about becoming a big brother. "I'm gonna teach her how to draw dinosaurs and do ninja flips," he told us proudly. "And also how to not eat crayons." "Solid priorities," I said, choking back a laugh. Emily just shook her head. "We're doomed." The pregnancy moved fast. Too fast. Some days I'd come home from work and just sit beside her, staring at her stomach like I could will time to slow down. We took birthing classes together. Lucas came to every ultrasound appointment, holding Emily's hand like a pro. At the 28-week scan, the tech smiled and said, "She's already got strong legs. Kicking like a little dancer." Emily squeezed my hand. "That's your fault. I don't dance." "You should. For her." So I did. That night, in the living room, with Emily laughing and Lucas filming on his tablet, I danced like an idiot to some old 90s song until Emily laughed so hard she cried. My parents were regular visitors now. They came over for dinner, helped with babysitting when Emily needed rest, and treated Lucas like he'd been theirs from the start. One afternoon, while Dad was helping Lucas build a birdhouse in the yard, he turned to me and said, "You're good at this. All of it. I don't think I ever told you that." It took me a second to reply. "You just did." Then came the scare. 31 weeks. Emily woke me up in the middle of the night, clutching her stomach. Something wasn't right. We rushed to the hospital. My hands were shaking the entire drive. I kept looking at her and thinking, please. Not now. Not like this. Thankfully, it wasn't labor. Just early contractions from stress and fatigue. They kept her overnight. Monitored the baby. Said she needed to slow down. Easier said than done, she muttered. "You're not doing this alone," I reminded her. "Not anymore." She nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "I know. I just forget sometimes." So I made her a promise, right there in that sterile hospital room. "I'm here. I'm always here." We came home the next morning. Lucas had made her a "welcome back" sign with glitter glue and spelled, "strongest mom ever," with backward letters. She burst into tears the second she saw it. "I love this kid," she whispered, holding him tight. "So do I," I said. "And his mom." She looked up, mascara smudged, exhausted, glowing. "I love you too, Ben." Rachel Grace came into the world at 38 weeks, screaming like she already had something to say. Emily was incredible, focused, fierce, and fearless. I held her hand through every contraction, every push, and when our daughter finally arrived, I was the one who cried the hardest. She was tiny, pink, and perfect. The nurse placed her in Emily's arms first, and then she was passed to me. I looked down at that little bundle and felt something I can't even name, love, yes, but more than that. Awe. Like the world had shifted on its axis and put everything finally in place. "Hi, sweetheart," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I'm your dad." The first night home with a newborn was chaos. Lucas tripped over a bassinet, the baby screamed until 2 a.m., and Emily fell asleep mid-sentence with a bottle in her hand. But there was something sacred in the mess. I woke up at 5 a.m., to find Lucas curled up beside the bassinet, whispering stories to his baby sister. He looked up and grinned. "She smiled at me," he said proudly. "She's probably just pooping." "She smiled," he insisted. Who was I to argue? Weeks passed. Then months. Emily and I found a rhythm: night feeds, doctor visits, late-night fridge raids where we whispered about everything and nothing. Lucas grew into his big brother role like he'd been born for it. He read to Rachel every night, even when she couldn't understand a word. One day, I came home from the hospital to find him teaching her how to high-five. "She almost got it," he said, beaming. Emily just looked at me, her face soft. "He's going to be okay. You both are." She stepped into my arms, rested her head on my chest. "No," she said. "We are." One evening, we sat on the porch, Rachel asleep in Emily's arms, Lucas chasing fireflies in the yard. The sunset painted everything gold. And I remembered who I used to be: solitary, successful, untouched by love because I told myself I didn't need it. And now? I had everything I didn't even know to dream about. A woman who made chaos feel like home. A son I'd found by accident but claimed with everything I had. A daughter who carried the name of a sister we both still missed. A family, not perfect, but ours. I once believed freedom meant solitude. That being alone was the price of success. But the truth? Love didn't take away my freedom. It gave it new meaning. It gave me a reason to stay. And in that quiet, glowing evening, with the hum of life all around me, I finally understood. Some stories don't end with a wedding or a baby or a quiet kiss under string lights. Some stories are just beginning.